be talking very shortly to David Moffett, former Chief Executive of New Zealand Rugby, about this big fallout of Ineos, who have left New Zealand Rugby in the lurch and now are heading to the courts. Courts are getting very popular at the moment, aren't they? After what I've talked about this morning. They have departed, it has to be said, their relationship with New Zealand Rugby. I'll come to that in just a second, and then we'll be talking to international trade, government relations and economic development expert Stephen Jacoby about the Trump tariffs and the news of the last 25% tariffs, the news of the last 48 hours, their impact upon Australia and New Zealand obviously in particular, and what this means for us. Stephen Jacoby this hour as well. But first of all, let's go and talk to a former Chief Executive of New Zealand Rugby. I think he left New Zealand Rugby then and went to become a Chief Executive of New South Wales Rugby Leagues from memory, looked after, the big rugby league competition in Australia. And he's become a consultant ever since. We've had him on the show before. Always very erudite. David Moffett joins us now. David, thank you for joining us. Nice to have you on.
Thank you, Michael, and I hope you're having a great day.
We are. Where are you based these days?
Just north of Christchurch in a place called Broomfield, which is inland from Amberley. Got 20 acres here. And, that's where I'm based and keep myself busy.
That sounds a bloody nice retirement. Tell me, did you need to get a university degree? Did we need to get a university degree to get your job?
No. Just need to understand the sporting landscape, and my business background certainly helped.
Yeah.
But I will never retire. My brain just doesn't understand that word.
No, good on you, and neither it should. Listen, David, remind me, when were you appointed first as the Chief Executive of New Zealand Rugby?
95.
Okay, so that was at the start of the professional era.
Yes, I was involved. There were 5 of us, in actual fact, that did the original News Limited deal for $555 million US, which kicked off Super 12 and also the international competition. So, yes, I was right at the beginning of professional rugby, and was there at New Zealand Rugby in the first year of professional rugby, which was in 1996.
And it was an exciting game. Tens of thousands flocked, hundreds of thousands across that. The Super 12 rugby was regarded as the greatest rugby competition, frankly, there'd ever been. What the hell's happened in the last 25 years, mate?
Well, mate, I just think that I largely blame coaches, because what happened was that you may remember those early days of Super 12. The crowds came in huge numbers, families. And then the coaches thought, oh, geez, I'm being paid now. I wasn't being paid yesterday. I'm being paid now, so I better make sure I don't lose my job. And so then it became a game based on defence. And then Super Rugby decided it was going to go to 18 teams and 12, 15, who knows, from one season to the next. And they basically shot themselves in the foot. They got rid of South Africa. Well, New Zealand was responsible for that. And it's been a mess ever since.
Yeah, it's a disaster now, I have to say. Okay, so Ineos, who are a huge petrochemical company, I think they're the 4th largest in the world. So Jim Ratcliffe set them up, I think about the same time. In actual fact, I'm thinking now that you first became Chief Executive of New Zealand Rugby. They joined as the shirt sponsor, essentially, and formed a sponsorship arrangement. They're now walking away. I've caught up with a few BBC and Times stories on this one, David, and it seems they're walking away for economic reasons, or I think what they really wanted to do was renegotiate their contract because they wanted to save themselves some money. Is that how you understand this relationship?
Yeah, there's been some strange things happening in the last couple of days. One, I've read that the New Zealand Rugby commercial company, which they formed, which is the one they're going to take legal action, has been in discussions with them for 8 months. And then I heard today that they haven't been in discussions at all, which obviously they have been. And that's what Ratcliffe has indicated. They've been trying to find a way through this. the contract's a contract, and if they believe that they haven't been able to reach an amicable agreement and there's no hope of getting there, then they're going to take legal action. And then the only people that win are the lawyers. And I think that's pretty much true of any litigation. Do I think it'll get to court? No, I don't.
Yeah, it's not a lot of money though. Ironically, Ineos have got much bigger money put into Manchester United, the America's Cup under the Britannia name. I see. They also own a couple of other football clubs, one in Switzerland and the French side, Nice. They're involved in Formula One, Mercedes. The Ineos Grenadiers cycling team is on the professional circuit. So this is, I would have thought, pretty small beer in comparison with all that. Why do you think that they would pull out? Do you think they're not getting value for money as well?
Well, I've got no idea, to be perfectly honest with you. We haven't got the real information behind why they've chosen to actually stop their sponsorship, and why New Zealand Rugby Commercial is going to take them to court. It seems, it's very unusual for a sport to take a sponsor to court because of the optics for any new sponsor that they might get. There was quite a bit of negativity around their original signing of the deal with Ineos, when the world was most likely at its height of wokeness, which thankfully, hopefully, is now dissipating. I just don't really understand the whole thing, except that if the lawyers for New Zealand Rugby believe they've got a winnable case and they've decided to take it to court. We must also remember, though, that even if they do go to court, that New Zealand Rugby will have to mitigate their losses, so that every court will say, okay, well, they pulled out, you reckon they owe you $8 million a year. What have you done to mitigate that? I.e., have you gone and found another sponsor? And if that other sponsor is more money or a bit less money, then the damages would be sort of contained within the differences. So there's a lot to play out there, and the best way to do this is for it not to go to court and for it not to be played out in the media. But I think the thing that Jim Ratcliffe needs to understand is that the amount of media that this has already got in this country will only be a fraction of what it will get if it actually goes to court, and you know that better than I do.
So you're saying the reputational risk is greater for him than it is for New Zealand Rugby?
Yeah. I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, mind you, he's got enough reputational risk being involved with Manchester United at the moment, I would have thought.
Yeah, and my team, Tottenham's playing them this weekend, and either one of them could get relegated. But
God, it's hilarious.
They're going so bad. They're going so badly. But yeah, no, those are always the dangers. Let's face it, the reputation of both organisations will suffer a little bit. Not so much New Zealand Rugby, because it'll be seen as this great, huge company trying to bully their way out of something that they signed up to. So I think the reputational risk for Ineos is going to be much greater. And you talked about, I'm very interested in cycling, and so they've got the Ineos Grenadiers, and that will be costing them a truckload more than they're paying New Zealand Rugby every year. So, this is a really strange one, that it hasn't been sorted.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it sure is, particularly considering their investments in other sporting agencies. Listen, okay, so if you were the chief executive of New Zealand Rugby and Ratcliffe was saying to you, listen, we're paying, well, I think what's it worth? It's worth about 10 million a year. Is that roughly New Zealand to
about eight, I believe.
8 million,
about
8 million a year. Okay. Yeah. So if you're getting $8 million a year and suddenly you're not, then you're going to have to go back out in the marketplace and get, a shirt sponsor, essentially, are you?
Yeah, essentially. I think the properties that they bought were shirt, perhaps shorts, and various, and the training kit. I'm not 100% sure on what they've actually bought. But yes, you're going to have to go and find somebody else in a market which is not as easy as a lot of people think. you know, because there are a lot of sports chasing sponsors, because of the approach that, I mean, you know, gambling, for example, but every shirt in the English Premier League has got a gambling organisation on the front of their shirts. Not everyone, but most of them seem to have. And I'm not quite sure what rules there are about that here. But I tend to think that that's not a market that's going to be open to, or that they want to chase, to be perfectly honest with you. So yeah, I mean, it's tough out there. But this is where our good friends Silver Lake are going to have to earn their money. They made a lot of promises, you know, when they were talking about getting 100 million fans buying, you know, replica shirts and all that sort of stuff, and that hasn't happened. It was never going to happen. But now they've got a situation where they're going to have to earn their money because they're going to have to go out and find new sponsors to cover either a sponsor or sponsors to cover the shortfall. And so that's going to be very interesting to watch and see what happens. I was very critical of that deal, and largely, well, putting aside the actual deal, but then they formed a spin-off company, New Zealand Rugby Commercial, to operate it. When I've always believed that if you're the chief executive of New Zealand Rugby, you can open just as many doors, if not more, than an organisation like Silver Lake.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to watch that too, I think, Michael.